I knew standing in the office lobby was a mistake, but I had no other choice. I'm a struggling Omega assistant, and today was my first day at this luxury real estate firm, Hayes Corporation. Everything felt intimidating. The marble floors polished to a mirror shine, the designer couches that probably cost more than my entire year's rent, and the people who judged me the moment they saw me because I clearly didn't belong at their level. Then suddenly a deep voice boomed across the space. "Apollo, stop. Come back here." I looked up and saw a massive black German shepherd running toward me at full speed. Behind him was a tall, sharp-featured alpha in a tailored charcoal suit, cold gray eyes and pure authority radiating from him like he owned the building, which he actually did. This was Tony Hayes, the company's CEO, and his dog came to a complete stop right in front of me, sitting perfectly straight on the ground as if he'd found exactly what he was looking for. Apollo placed his heavy head against my leg like I was already his chosen person, like he'd known me forever. Tony's expression cracked slightly. Shocked, confused, maybe even a little irritated. "Apollo never does this," he said, stepping closer, his voice deep and controlled. I froze because his scent became crystal clear now. Cedar wood, rain and raw dominance that every alpha carries, but this felt more intense, more overwhelming. My Omega instinct screamed at me to back off. Submit, look down. But Apollo had me locked in place with his affection. Tony looked me up and down, assessing, calculating every detail. "You're new," he stated rather than asked. I could only nod because words wouldn't come out. Then he asked directly and coldly, "What's your name?" "Albert," I whispered, trying desperately to sound professional. "Everyone calls me Albert." His lips barely moved. "Albert. Interesting." Apollo started licking my hand like I was his favorite person in the world, and Tony's jaw showed strange tension as if this situation was completely beyond his understanding. From the other side of the lobby came the sharp clicking of heels, and a gorgeous beta woman entered. Blonde hair perfectly styled, sharp red lips, designer dress, and confidence that filled the entire room. "Tony darling, what's the delay?" she said, then stopped dead when she saw the scene. Me, Apollo, and Tony standing so close. Her eyes narrowed instantly. "Who is this?" Tony didn't look away from me, as if he was still trying to figure out what was happening. "New hire," he said flatly. "Junior assistant." The woman, whose name I caught from her badge, Natasha Cole, walked closer with calculated steps. Her energy was pure threat, possessive and sharp. "Your dog seems unusually attached," she said, fake sweetness dripping from every word. I tried to move Apollo aside out of embarrassment, but he wouldn't budge. Instead, he pressed closer. Tony whistled sharply and commandingly. "Apollo, here, now." The dog slowly looked at me, then at his owner, then back at me, and then completely ignored Tony. Total disregard. Natasha's face tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line. Tony's did too. Suddenly, I found myself in the middle of a strange triangle. An alpha CEO who didn't even know me, his fiancée who already wanted me gone, and his dog who absolutely refused to leave my side. Tony said quietly, almost to himself, "This has never happened before. Not once in 5 years." Natasha forced a smile, her voice tight. "Maybe your new assistant has special tricks. Omega pheromones can be quite manipulative, can't they?" Her tone was accusatory, a subtle threat hidden beneath. I stood there, heart pounding against my ribs, hands clammy, knowing that this was only my first day, only the first few minutes, and already everything had become dangerously complicated, and I had absolutely no idea where this complication would take me. The silence stretched unbearably. Apollo refused to move, his warm weight pressed against my legs like an anchor. Tony's gray eyes never left my face, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I could feel Natasha's fury radiating across the space between us, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer handbag in a rhythm that screamed impatience. "Well," she said finally, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife, "I suppose we should get going. The board meeting starts in 20 minutes, and you know how Senator Williams hates tardiness." Tony didn't respond immediately. He kept watching Apollo, who had now placed both paws on my feet as if claiming ownership. Something flickered across the CEO's face, not quite amusement, Not quite curiosity but something deeper I couldn't name. Go ahead without me, Tony said abruptly. I'll handle this situation first. Natasha's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of anger. Handle what exactly? A dog having a momentary fixation? Apollo doesn't have momentary fixations, Tony replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. In 5 years he's never behaved this way with anyone. Not staff. Not clients. Not even family members who've tried to bond with him. I wanted to disappear into the floor. This attention, this scrutiny, this entire situation felt like standing under a spotlight I never auditioned for. Mr. Hayes, I started, my voice embarrassingly shaky. I should really get to my desk. The orientation packet said to report to Human Resources by 9. And I'm already stay, he commanded, and it wasn't a request. The alpha authority in his voice made my omega instincts want to obey automatically, which annoyed me. I'd worked hard to build resistance to alpha commands to maintain my independence despite my biology. Natasha made a small, disgusted sound in her throat. This is ridiculous, Tony. We have actual business to conduct. Not waste time on. Then go conduct it, he interrupted, still not looking at her. I'll join when I'm ready. The dismissal was clear and brutal. Natasha's face went through several shades of red, before settling on a cold, controlled mask. Fine, she said, each letter sharp as glass. But don't think this conversation is over. Her heels clicked away violently, echoing through the lobby until the elevator doors closed behind her. The moment she was gone, Tony crouched down to Apollo's level. What is it about him? He asked the dog quietly, as if expecting an answer. What do you sense that I can't? Apollo whined softly, tail wagging but didn't move from my side. Tony stood back up, and for the first time since this bizarre encounter started, he looked directly into my eyes with something approaching genuine curiosity rather than cold assessment. Have we met before? He asked. No, sir, I answered quickly. I'm certain I would remember. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Yes, I suppose you would. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then pocketed it again. Cancel your HR orientation. You're being reassigned. My stomach dropped. Reassigned? But I haven't even started. You'll be working directly with me, he stated. Executive assistant level, though your pay will reflect the promotion immediately. Margaret in HR will handle the paperwork. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. I what? Why? Tony looked down at Apollo, who was now completely relaxed against my legs, eyes half closed in contentment. Because something about you calms him, and if Apollo trusts you this completely within minutes, then there's something here worth understanding. He straightened his tie, composure settling back into place. Report to the executive floor after lunch. Bring your things. You'll have the desk outside my office. Before I could process or protest or even thank him, he walked toward the elevator, pausing only to whistle once more for Apollo. This time, the dog hesitated, looked at me with what I swear was apologetic eyes, then slowly followed his owner. As the elevator doors closed, Tony's gaze met mine one final time, and I saw something there that made my breath catch. Interest, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite name but that felt dangerous and thrilling all at once. The lobby fell silent again. I stood there alone, trying to understand what just happened, knowing only that my first day had taken a turn I never could have anticipated, and that somehow everything had just become incredibly complicated. The next morning found me in the conference room arranging files, organizing presentations alphabetically when Tony entered. Alone. Apollo wasn't with him this time. He closed the door behind him, and that sound sent a chill down my spine. My breath caught. You're efficient, he observed, watching me work on the perfectly stacked folders with color-coded tabs I'd spent half the night creating. I gave an uncomfortable smile. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Tony, he corrected, hands sliding into his pockets. Use my first name when we're alone. He moved closer, and my omega senses went on high alert because this proximity felt deliberate, calculated, intentional. The morning light caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look younger somehow, less like the untouchable CEO and more like someone real. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that his scent wrapped around me again, that same cedarwood and rain combination that my instincts recognized too easily. I need to ask you something, he began, his tone more serious than I'd heard before. Has anyone in your family worked with animals? Trainers, veterinarians, anything like that? The question caught me off guard. No, I replied honestly. We didn't even have pets growing up. My mother was allergic. Tony frowned slightly, processing this information. Then there's no logical explanation for Apollo's reaction to you. Maybe he just liked my shampoo or something. I offered weakly, trying to inject some lightness into the increasingly tense atmosphere. It's not the shampoo. His certainty was absolute. I've had Apollo since he was 8 weeks old. I've introduced him to hundreds of people, business partners, family members, other Omega assistants. He's never reacted to anyone the way he reacted to you. The weight of his attention made me nervous. I busied myself with straightening papers that didn't need straightening. What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Tony? I caught myself. I'm just trying to do my job well. I know, he said, and something in his voice softened. That's actually refreshing. He moved to the windows overlooking the city, the morning sun creating a halo effect around his silhouette. Most people want something from me. Access, connections, money, status. It's exhausting, being constantly evaluated for what you can provide rather than who you are. I didn't know what to say to that. This felt too personal, too revealing for a CEO talking to his brand new assistant. Apollo saw something in you, Tony continued, still facing the window. Animals have instincts we've lost. They see through pretense, through social masks. They recognize authenticity. He paused. I've learned to trust his judgment more than I trust most people's words. That must be lonely, I said before I could stop myself. He turned, surprise clear on his face. What? Trusting your dog more than people, I clarified, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. It sounds isolating. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then something shifted in his expression, the corporate mask slipping just slightly. It is, he admitted quietly. But safer. People lie. People manipulate. People want things. And you think I don't want anything? I challenged gently. Everyone wants something, Tony. That's just being human. A smile tugged at his lips, genuine and unexpected. What do you want, Albert? The question hung between us, loaded with more meaning than the simple words suggested. I thought carefully before answering. Stability, I said finally. A job I can keep. Rent I can pay. Maybe enough saved up to finish my degree someday. Nothing dramatic. That's it? He sounded almost disappointed. No ambitions for corner offices or executive positions? I'm an Omega in a corporate world designed for alphas and betas, I stated matter-of-factly. My ambitions are survival first, success second. Something dark flickered across his face. That's a depressing worldview. That's a realistic worldview, I corrected. I've learned not to reach for things that aren't meant for people like me. Tony crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. What if I told you that's about to change? My heart hammered. What do you mean? I mean, he said deliberately, that I'm going to make sure you have every opportunity to prove exactly what you're capable of. No limitations, no Omega-specific restrictions, just pure merit. Why? I breathed. Why would you do that? Because Apollo trusted you instantly, he replied. And because in 2 minutes of conversation, you've been more honest with me than most people manage in years. The intensity of his gaze made my knees weak. You don't know me, Tony. I could be. You're not, he interrupted with absolute certainty. Whatever doubts you have about yourself, Apollo saw past them. So will I. A knock on the door shattered the moment. We both stepped back instinctively as Natasha entered without waiting for permission. Her sharp eyes immediately assessed the space between us, the tension in the air. Am I interrupting? She asked, though her tone suggested she didn't care if she was. Just reviewing Albert's first assignments, Tony replied smoothly, his professional mask snapping back into place so quickly it was almost jarring. He'll be handling the Morrison account documentation. Natasha's eyebrow arched. The Morrison account, that's usually handled by someone with at least 3 years' experience. Then Albert will learn quickly, Tony said with finality. Was there something you needed? The dismissal in his tone was subtle but clear. Natasha's smile didn't reach her eyes. The quarterly projections are ready for your review. I thought we could discuss them over lunch. I'm working through lunch today, he replied. Email them to me. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. How dedicated. She looked at me then, really looked, her gaze calculating and cold. Welcome to Hayes Corporation, Albert. I'm sure you'll find it very educational. The threat in her words was barely concealed. I managed a polite nod. Thank you, Miss Cole. After she left, the silence felt heavier. Tony ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking tired. She's going to make things difficult for you, he warned. I know, I acknowledged. I gathered that from yesterday. If she crosses any lines, I can handle myself. I interrupted gently. I've dealt with difficult people before. He studied me for a long moment. Yes, he said finally. I believe you can. Something passed between us then. Not quite trust, not quite understanding, but the beginning of both. Whatever was happening, whatever strange connection Apollo had sensed, it was growing into something neither of us had anticipated. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that this was only the beginning of something much more complicated than a simple job. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, and in that light I saw Tony Hayes not as the untouchable CEO but as someone searching for something real in a world built on contracts and expectations. And somehow, impossibly, I'd become part of that search. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when I finally finished the last file, my eyes burning from staring at screens for 14 straight hours. The building was almost completely empty at this hour, just security guards making their rounds and my single desk lamp illuminating the executive floor. I was gathering my things when the elevator chimed. The doors opened and Apollo bounded out without a leash, completely free. He ran straight to me and settled at my feet, tail wagging with such enthusiasm it was almost comical. Apollo? I looked around, startled. How did you get here alone? Then Tony emerged from the elevator, but he looked nothing like the CEO I'd seen during business hours. He wore dark jeans and a fitted black Henley leather jacket draped over one arm. The transformation was striking. Less intimidating corporate leader, more approachable human being. I brought him, Tony explained, his voice carrying none of the formality from earlier. He's been pacing my apartment for hours. Wouldn't settle. I finally realized he was probably looking for you. I knelt down to properly greet Apollo, running my fingers through his thick fur. The dog's entire body relaxed under my touch, a contented sigh escaping him. Tony watched us with an expression I couldn't quite read. You work too late, he observed, leaning against a nearby desk. First week, I explained. Want to make a good impression? You already have, he assured me. No one expects you to kill yourself over filing systems. I shrugged, scratching behind Apollo's ears. Habit, I guess. Always had to work twice as hard to prove I deserved to be in the room. Tony was quiet for a moment, then moved closer, sitting on the edge of my desk. The casual intimacy of the gesture caught me off guard. Tell me something, he began. When you applied here, what did you think you'd be doing? Honestly, I sat back in my chair, Apollo's head resting on my knee. I thought I'd be fetching coffee and making copies. Maybe filing if I was lucky. The junior assistant position seemed almost too good to be true. And now you're handling the Morrison account, he noted. How does that feel? Terrifying, I admitted with a laugh. But also, exciting, like maybe I actually can do this. Tony smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. You can. I wouldn't have given you the assignment otherwise. The building's silence pressed in around us, intimate and strange. Apollo had fallen asleep with his head on my foot, his breathing steady and peaceful. Can I ask you something personal? I ventured. Tony's eyebrows rose slightly. That depends on the question. Why did you really bring Apollo here tonight? I asked carefully. You could have just let him pace, or given him a sedative. Why drive all the way back to the office? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. Because I wanted to see if he'd calm down with you here. And I wanted to see... He paused. I wanted to see you again. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with implications neither of us was quite ready to name. Tony, I started carefully. I'm your employee. This, whatever this is, it's not appropriate. I know, he agreed readily. Believe me, I know. I've run through every HR policy in my head, every professional boundary, every reason this is a terrible idea. Then why? Because for the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe around someone. He interrupted, intensity creeping into his voice. Do you know what it's like to wear a mask every single day? To calculate every word, every expression, every interaction for maximum business advantage. I thought about my own masks. The ones I wore to seem less omega, less vulnerable, less different. Yeah, I said softly. Actually, I do. His eyes met mine and something passed between us, recognition maybe. Understanding. I thought you might, he murmured. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Apollo's gentle snoring the only sound. Tony's guard was completely down now and I could see the exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes. When's the last time you slept properly? I asked. He laughed without humor. Define properly. More than 4 hours. In an actual bed. Not waking up to check emails. Then probably, March? He calculated. Maybe February. That's not sustainable. I protested. You're going to burn out. Says the person who's been here for 14 hours on their second day, he countered with amusement. That's different. I'm trying to prove myself, and I'm trying to keep a multi-billion-dollar corporation running while managing a merger I don't want, a relationship I don't believe in, and a dog who apparently likes my assistant more than me, he pointed out. The bitterness in his voice surprised me. You really don't want to marry her, do you? I asked quietly. Tony's expression shuddered. That's complicated. Most important things are, I observed. He looked at me then, really looked, and I felt exposed under that gaze. You're different than I expected, he admitted. Different how? Braver, he said simply. Stronger. Most Omegas in this building are terrified of me. But you argue with me, question me, treat me like I'm actually human. Aren't you? I challenged gently. Sometimes I wonder, he replied, and the honesty in those words broke something in my chest. Apollo stirred, adjusting his position without waking. Tony watched him with something like envy. He's never this peaceful with me, he said quietly. Maybe he knows you need someone to be at peace around, I suggested. Maybe he's trying to show you what that looks like. Tony's laugh was surprised and genuine. Are you always this insightful, or is it just sleep deprivation talking? Probably both, I admitted with a smile. He stood then, and I thought he was leaving, but instead he moved to the windows. The city spread out below us, millions of lights creating a constellation of human activity. I built all of this, he said quietly. Took my father's company and tripled it, made us one of the most powerful real estate firms in the country. And I did it by being exactly what everyone expected. Ruthless, focused, uncompromising. That sounds exhausting, I observed. It is, he agreed. But it's also all I know how to be. I stood, careful not to disturb Apollo, and joined him at the window. Maybe it doesn't have to be, I suggested. Maybe there's room for something else too. He turned to face me and we were suddenly very close. The height difference meant I had to tilt my head back, and the position felt vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with Omega biology and everything to do with the person looking down at me. What would that something else look like? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, I admitted honestly. But maybe we could figure it out together. The words hung between us, an offer and a question and a promise all at once. Tony raised his hand slowly, giving me time to step back, but I did. His fingers brushed my cheek gently, the touch sending electricity through my entire nervous system. This is dangerous, he murmured. I know, I breathed. For both of us. We should stop, he said. But his hand didn't move. We should, I agreed. But I didn't step back. Behind us, Apollo made a contented sound in his sleep. And somehow that broke the spell. Tony dropped his hand, stepping back with visible effort. I should go, he said, voice rough. Let you get home. It's late. Yeah. I managed, my voice embarrassingly shaky. Late. He called Apollo, who woke reluctantly and padded over to his owner. But before leaving, the dog circled back to me, pressing his head against my hand one more time. He really does like you, Tony observed, something unreadable in his expression. The feeling's mutual, I replied. Not entirely sure we were still talking about the dog. Tony moved to the elevator, then paused with his hand on the button. Albert. I turned. Thank you, he said quietly. For being honest. For being real. For just being you. Before I could respond, the elevator doors closed, leaving me alone on the empty floor with my racing heart and the lingering warmth where his fingers had touched my face. I gathered my things slowly, my mind replaying every moment, every word, every loaded silence. Whatever was happening between us was growing beyond my control, beyond professional boundaries, beyond anything I knew how to navigate. And the terrifying part? I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. The city lights continued to glow outside the windows as I finally headed home, carrying with me the memory of gray eyes and gentle touches and the certain knowledge that everything was about to change in ways I couldn't predict but somehow couldn't wait to discover. I thought the dinner would be simple and private, a quiet corner restaurant where we could talk about Apollo's unusual behavior, maybe find some logical explanation that would make sense of the past few days. But when I walked into the upscale Italian place Tony had texted me the address for, arriving exactly on time, I immediately knew something was wrong. Natasha was there. She sat next to Tony in an emerald green dress that probably cost more than my monthly rents, smiling that perfectly practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes, positioned possessively close to him. Apollo wasn't anywhere near her. Instead, the dog waited restlessly by the entrance door, pacing like he was part of some carefully orchestrated plan. "Elbert," Natasha's voice dripped with fake warmth, honey-sweet poison. "Tony didn't mention you'd be joining us this evening." What a spontaneous surprise. Tony's face remained carefully neutral, but I caught the tightness in his jaw, the white-knuckled grip on his water glass. "Natasha decided to join us at the last minute," he explained, his tone suggesting this wasn't his choice. "I hope you don't mind the change in plans." The translation was crystal clear. This was a trap, deliberately set to make me uncomfortable, to put me in my place. I sat down awkwardly across from them, feeling completely out of my depth. The restaurant was expensive, the kind where they don't list prices on the menu because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. A waiter appeared, took our orders with professional efficiency, and disappeared. Natasha lifted her wine glass delicately, studying me over the rim like a specimen under glass. "So, Elbert, I'd love to know more about you. Tell me, where did you grow up? What does your family do?" The question was designed to expose every weakness, every lack of pedigree. I kept my voice steady, refusing to be ashamed. "Small town in the Midwest. My mother raised me alone. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. I got through school on scholarships, worked 3 part-time jobs in college to cover what the scholarships didn't. This job is the result of a lot of hard work and some luck." "How inspiring," Natasha purred, her condescension barely masked. "Tony has always had such a soft spot for charity cases. Haven't you, darling? Always wanting to save people who can't quite save themselves." Tony's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, his knuckles going white. "Natasha." The single word was a warning. "What?" She widened her eyes innocently. "I'm complimenting your generosity. It takes a special person to see potential where others might only see." "Stop talking," Tony interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous level I'd never heard before. The tension at the table became suffocating. That's when Apollo made his move, walking confidently across the restaurant floor and settling directly beneath my chair, his warm body pressed against my legs protectively. I hadn't called him. I hadn't even looked at him. He'd simply chosen. Natasha's practiced smile cracked visibly. "Tony, your dog is causing a scene. Control him." "He's perfectly controlled," Tony replied, his tone ice cold. "He's simply showing preference for genuine people over fake ones." I saw Natasha's face flush, her carefully maintained composure slipping. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp and cruel. "Do you want to know what I really think, Elbert? I think you're using tricks. Omega pheromone enhancers. Artificial scent manipulators. They sell them online now, don't they? It's a pathetic, desperate attempt to secure a position you haven't earned." The accusation stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm not using any tricks or manipulations." Apollo's response is natural. "I can't control." "Natural?" She laughed bitterly. "Please. Dogs are loyal to their owners, to the people who feed and care for them. Unless, of course, someone interferes with that bond using artificial means." Tony's hand slammed down on the table so hard that glasses rattled. water sloshing over the rims. The noise drew attention from nearby tables, heads turning to watch our drama unfold. Enough. His voice cutting through the restaurant's ambient noise. This ends right now. Natasha blinked, genuinely surprised by his public display. Tony, I'm merely pointing out, you invited yourself to this dinner specifically to humiliate him. Tony continued, standing up abruptly. You wanted to make him feel small, unwanted, out of place. I won't sit here and watch you tear someone down just because you're threatened by them. He turned to me, extending his hand. Albert. We're leaving. My heart hammered as I stood, uncertain. Natasha's voice rose, sharp with panic and rage. If you walk out of here with him, Tony, we're finished. The engagement is over. The merger between our companies collapses. Everything our families built together gone. Tony looked at her and his expression was colder than I'd ever seen it. Good, he said simply. Because we were never really together, Natasha. Our engagement was a business transaction our fathers arranged when we were teenagers. I've spent years pretending it meant something more, but I'm done lying to myself and everyone else. He took my hand firmly, his grip warm and grounding. Come on, Albert. Apollo. The three of us walked out together, Apollo trotting between us like a guardian. Behind us I could hear the whispers starting, phones being pulled out to capture the moment. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp, a relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. Tony didn't let go of my hand for several blocks, and I didn't pull away. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice quiet, for subjecting you to that, for not warning you she'd be there, for everything. You just publicly ended your engagement, I pointed out, my voice shaking slightly. The business merger. The merger was built on a lie. He interrupted firmly. My company will survive without it. I have other options, other partnerships waiting. But more importantly, Albert, I can't keep living a lie just because it's convenient for business. He stopped walking, turning to face me under a streetlight. I don't know exactly what this is between us. It's too new, too fast, too complicated to name. But Apollo saw something in you from the first moment, and every day since, I've understood more clearly what he saw. Apollo barked once, soft and approving, as if agreeing with everything Tony said. Tony smiled, and it was genuine and warm in a way I'd rarely seen. Even my dog thinks I'm making the right choice. Standing there under the streetlights, the city glowing around us, I felt something fundamental shift. This wasn't just about attraction or convenience or even the strange bond Apollo had formed with me. This was about two people choosing honesty over expectation, truth over comfort. This is going to be complicated, I warned him. People will talk, the media will have a field day. Let them, Tony said, stepping closer. I've spent my entire life doing what other people expected, playing the role everyone wanted me to play. For once, I want to make a choice that's purely mine. The cold wind picked up, and I shivered. Tony immediately shrugged off his jacket and draped it around my shoulders. The gesture was simple but intimate, and it made my chest tighten with emotion. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now, Tony said, his hand still holding mine. We figure this out together. No scripts, no plans, no family expectations. Just us. Apollo pressed against both our legs, as if physically binding us together. And in that moment, surrounded by city noise and cold air and uncertainty, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope, not just for this unusual relationship forming between us, but for the possibility that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never saw coming. The ones that don't follow any logical path but feel absolutely right anyway. We started walking again, no particular destination in mind, just moving through the city together. And for the first time since this whole strange situation began, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. The morning after the restaurant incident, I walked into Hayes Corporation's lobby and immediately knew something had changed. The usual morning bustle felt different. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I passed. Eyes followed me with barely concealed curiosity, and the whispers started the moment I turned my back. I pulled out my phone while waiting for the elevator, and my stomach dropped when I saw the notifications. Hundreds of them. The top trending story on every major news site and gossip blog: billionaire CEO Tony Hayes ends engagement with coal industry's heiress for unknown Omega assistant. Multi-million-dollar merger in jeopardy. The attached photos were damning. Tony and me leaving the restaurant hand in hand, Apollo walking between us like a loyal guardian. And in the background, Natasha's face twisted with fury and humiliation. Someone had captured it all. Probably a diner with a smartphone who'd recognized Tony and smelled a story worth selling. The comments section was brutal. Gold-digging Omega using pheromones to trap a billionaire. Homewrecker destroys business merger for personal gain. This is why Omegas shouldn't be allowed in corporate positions, too manipulative. I felt sick reading them, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the vitriol. Upstairs, I could see through the glass walls of Tony's executive suite that an emergency meeting was already in progress. Senior board members I recognized from company photos sat around the conference table, along with what looked like an expensive PR team and probably several lawyers. I stood outside helplessly, unsure whether I should even be there or if I'd just make everything worse by my presence. That's when Natasha appeared, her heels clicking against the marble floor with sharp, aggressive precision. "Enjoying your moment in the spotlight," she hissed, stepping into my personal space aggressively. "All those people reading about you, talking about you. This is what you wanted, isn't it?" "I didn't want any of this," I replied quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I didn't ask for photographers or tabloids but you didn't exactly discourage it either," she cut me off viciously. "Walking out of that restaurant holding his hand like you'd won some kind of prize. Do you really think this will last, Elbert? Do you honestly believe Tony will choose someone like you for the long term?" Her voice dripped with contempt. "You have no family connections, no social standing, no wealth of your own. You're a novelty, a distraction from the pressures of his real life. And when he gets bored, and he will get bored, you'll be left with nothing but a scandal attached to your name." I met her eyes directly, refusing to look away. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am temporary. But at least what we have is real, not a contract signed by our parents before we were old enough to have a say in our own lives." Her face flushed angry red, and I saw her hand twitch like she wanted to slap me. Before she could act on the impulse or continue her verbal assault, Tony's office door opened with decisive force. He took in the scene immediately. Me cornered Natasha standing too close with obvious aggression. "Natasha," his voice was sharp and commanding. "Leave this floor, now." "Tony, we need to talk privately," she tried, her tone shifting to something almost pleading. "We can fix this situation if you just—" "No," he interrupted flatly. "We can't fix anything because there's nothing to fix. You leaked those photos to the press. You violated my privacy as revenge for a perceived slight. We're done, legally, professionally and personally. My lawyers will be in contact with yours regarding the dissolution of our engagement contract." Natasha's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. Tears welled in her eyes, though I couldn't tell if they were genuine or theatrical. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Tony. This will lill everything you've worked for, everything your father built. And for what? For him?" The contempt in that last word was like acid. "For my own happiness," Tony replied simply. "Something I should have prioritized years ago." She stared at him for a long moment, then turned on her heel and walked away, her departure less dignified than she probably wanted, fury evident in every step. Tony turned to me, his expression softening. "Come inside, please." The boardroom was intimidating, full of powerful people whose decisions affected thousands of employees and billions in assets. But Tony's presence beside me was grounding. He addressed them with absolute authority. "I'm fully aware of the current media situation and the attention it's generating," he began without preamble. "However, my personal life will not impact this company's performance, our quarterly projections, or our ability to deliver results to our investors. If anyone has legitimate business concerns related to actual operations, speak now." The silence was tense. Finally, the oldest board member, a silver-haired man I recognized as Richard Carmichael, one of the original investors, spoke carefully. "Tony, we're not questioning your personal choices. What concerns us is public perception and investor confidence. The coal merger represented significant value, which I've already replaced." Tony responded confidently. "I have 3 alternative partnerships in active negotiation, each offering better terms than the coal arrangement. The company will not only survive but thrive." Another board member, a sharp-looking woman named Patricia Chen, asked the question everyone was probably thinking. And the situation with your Omega assistant, how do we address that with stakeholders? Elbert is qualified, dedicated, and remains an employee of this company, Tony stated firmly. That's not negotiable. If anyone has concerns about his professional performance, I'm happy to review his work, but his personal relationship with me is exactly that, personal. This meeting is adjourned. The dismissal was clear. Board members filed out slowly, some looking relieved, others still concerned, most whispering to each other. When the room finally emptied, leaving just Tony and me, the silence felt heavy. This is my fault, I said, guilt weighing on every word. If I'd just kept my distance, stayed professional, then we'd both still be pretending. Tony interrupted gently. I'd still be trapped in a loveless engagement, and you'd still be hiding who you are to fit into a professional mold. Is that really better? He sat down beside me, closer than any professional boundary would allow. Elbert, I know this is happening fast. I know it's messy and public and complicated, but I'm tired of hiding. Tired of living my life according to other people's plans and expectations. Your reputation, I started, is worth nothing if I'm miserable every day, he finished. I've spent 32 years building this company, making my father proud, being the perfect alpha CEO everyone expected. And I was empty inside, completely hollow. He took my hand, his grip firm and warm. Please stay. Help me figure out how to be more than just a corporate machine. Because Apollo saw something in you that I'm only beginning to understand. You're genuine in a world full of facades. From the corner where he'd been quietly observing, Apollo got up and walked over, resting his head on my lap with complete trust. Tony smiled at the sight. He decided weeks ago. I'm just now catching up to his wisdom. Despite the chaos outside, the media frenzy, the uncertain future, and the judgmental stares we'd face, I felt something unexpected in that moment. Safety. Like maybe, despite everything, this risk was worth taking. 3 weeks had passed, and the dust was beginning to settle into something manageable. The initial media feeding frenzy had died down to occasional gossip column mentions, mostly speculating about our relationship status or Tony's next business move. Investors had stabilized after Tony announced not one but 2 new partnership deals that were financially stronger than the Cole merger would have been. Natasha had very publicly moved on with another wealthy alpha, a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, though the bitterness still showed in occasional interview quotes about betrayal and poor judgment. And I was still here, still working at Hayes Corporation, though now my role had evolved into something more strategic, more meaningful. I'd proven myself capable of handling complex accounts, and even the skeptical board members had grudgingly acknowledged my contributions. Tonight I was at Tony's apartment for the first time. It was a stunning space, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist modern design that somehow managed to feel warm rather than cold, and enough square footage to house 3 families comfortably. Apollo lay contentedly beside me on an expensive rug, his breathing deep and peaceful. Tony was in the kitchen making coffee, wearing casual clothes, jeans, and a soft sweater, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. I need to tell you something important, he said, carrying 2 mugs over and sitting down close enough that our shoulders touched. My stomach immediately knotted with anxiety. What is it? I asked carefully, trying to read his expression for clue. The board made me an official offer last week, he began, his voice serious. They want me to relocate permanently to our London office as CEO of European operations. It's a promotion, technically. More importantly, it's a complete fresh start. No scandal, no media attention, no baggage. Just a clean slate, thousands of miles away from all of this. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. The coffee mug nearly slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. London, I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. That's a good opportunity. It would be, Tony agreed, if I'd accepted it. My head snapped up. What did you tell them? I turned it down immediately, he said, meeting my eyes directly. Didn't even consider it, really. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy, but confusion followed quickly. Why would you refuse that? It's exactly what you need. Escape from everything that's happened here. The chance to rebuild without the constant scrutiny. Because London doesn't have what I need, Tony replied simply. He set down his mug and turned to face me fully. It doesn't have you, and honestly, it probably doesn't have Apollo either. since I doubt he'd willingly board an international flight. I couldn't help the laugh that escaped, shaky and emotional. Tony, you can't make life-altering career decisions based on a dog and someone you've known for barely a month. That's not rational. Who says it has to be rational? He challenged gently. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with tenderness that made my breath catch. Albert, you're the first authentic thing I've encountered in years. Everything else in my life has been calculated, strategic, designed to maximize profit or maintain appearances. But you're just genuinely yourself. And that's more valuable than any business merger or social connection. This won't be easy going forward, I warned him, needing him to understand the reality. People will continue to talk, to judge, to compare us. There will always be someone saying you made A, that you could do better, that I'm not enough. Then let them talk, Tony said firmly. I've spent my entire life performing for other people, being the son my father wanted, the CEO the board expected, the alpha society deemed appropriate. I'm exhausted from pretending. I don't want to spend another day living according to someone else's script. Apollo suddenly barked once, soft and happy, his tail thumping against the floor enthusiastically. Tony smiled at the sound, then pulled me closer until I was pressed against his chest, his warmth surrounding me completely. I don't have a ring, he admitted quietly. I don't have some perfect romantic speech prepared or a detailed plan for our future. But I have this. He guided my hand to rest directly under his heart, where I could feel the steady, strong rhythm beneath my palm. It's yours if you want it. If you're willing to take the risk of building something real with me, despite all the complications and uncertainties. Tears blurred my vision as the weight of what he was offering hit me fully. This wasn't just about a relationship or overcoming scandal. This was about two people choosing each other despite every logical reason not to, despite every obstacle in their path. I want it, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I want this. I want us. Thank God, Tony breathed, and his smile was completely unguarded, more genuine than I'd ever seen. Because Apollo would never have forgiven me if I let you go. He'd probably have staged some kind of canine rebellion, refused to eat, destroyed all my favorite shoes. We both laughed then, the tension breaking into something lighter, easier. Apollo joined in with excited barking, clearly sensing the shift in emotional atmosphere. He jumped up, placing his paws on both our laps, tail wagging frantically. I think he approves, I observed, scratching behind his ears. He approved from day one, Tony corrected. He just had to wait for me to catch up to his superior judgment. I looked around the apartment at the city lights twinkling outside the windows, at Apollo's happy face, at Tony's genuine smile, and felt something settle in my chest. Peace maybe, or hope, or just the simple recognition that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for, the ones that don't make sense on paper but feel absolutely right in reality. So what happens now? I asked. Now we figure it out together, Tony replied. No predetermined plans, no family expectations, no corporate strategies, just two people learning how to build something honest in a world that usually rewards performance over authenticity. He kissed my forehead gently, and we trust that Apollo's instincts were right all along. Looking back on everything, the strange first meeting in the lobby, the late-night conversations, the public scandal, the difficult choices, I realized that our beginning, unconventional as it was, had a strange kind of perfection to it, because it started with truth. A dog recognized something genuine in me that even I hadn't fully acknowledged, and that recognition sparked something real between two people who'd both been living behind carefully constructed masks. There were no politics involved, no manipulation, no hidden agendas, just honest connection, however unexpected and complicated. And maybe I thought as Tony held me close and Apollo settled contentedly at our feet, that was the best possible foundation for whatever came next. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights and feeling the solid warmth of each other's presence, knowing that the road ahead would have challenges but choosing to walk it together anyway. Because some things, the real things, the true things, are always worth fighting for.